Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Phyllis and I, Travis McKinney, might be considered a typical couple, at least on the surface. We have our own interests and ambitions that rarely overlap. I enjoy playing golf and writing short stories in my spare time, while Phyllis devotes her energy to arts and crafts and is currently campaigning for an at-large seat on the city council. Unlike state or national campaigns, local elections run on meager funds, mostly from friends, family, and a handful of shady backers seeking influence. Phyllis, being significantly younger than the entrenched, bribe-taking fossils currently in office, brings a fresh, hopeful energy to the race. Like any couple, we have our disagreements, especially when it comes to preferences and pet peeves. For instance, I've had an aversion to dogs ever since I was bitten by a stray during a little league game at age 11. Just the sound of growling is enough to make the hair on my neck stand up. Naturally, Phyllis loves dogs. Conversely, spiders and snakes don't bother me in the least, but wasps? No thanks. Phyllis, however, reacts to spiders, snakes, and anything skittering across the floor as if the world's ending. If a mouse or cockroach appears, she expects me to handle it immediately. No teasing, no questions, just get rid of it. We both love cats, but our busy travel schedules make owning one impractical. Maybe someday, if life slows down, we'll consider it. A family? Perhaps in the future, but not until after this election is done. Professionally, I work in forensic accounting, following the money, tracing corruption, and exposing those who prey on the vulnerable. My files are filled with the darkest corners of financial fraud. Phyllis, on the other hand, works in public relations for General Hospital and serves as the face of their community outreach. With no children tying us down, we often escape to warm destinations, usually to all-inclusive resorts with open bars. While the drinks are unlimited, the service is slow and intentionally dismissive unless you're tipping generously. Regardless, I usually end up overindulging. This habit of mine frustrates Phyllis. It ruins her fun when I'm too drunk to function. I see it differently. Vacation is my chance to disconnect from the grim realities of my work. To celebrate Phyllis's birthday, we went out for a quiet, elegant dinner. We skipped dessert and drinks, eager to return home for something more intimate. After nearly a week without any action, the tension between us was thick with anticipation. As we entered the bedroom, Phyllis smiled playfully. "Glad to see you're ready to get back in the saddle," she teased. I encouraged her to take one of her ecstasy pills, souvenirs from our last trip to Mexico. I had my own stash of little blue pills. We didn't indulge often, but when we did, it heightened the experience dramatically. That glimmer in her eyes returned, and I led her down the hall to our bedroom. The bed was scattered with rose petals. A feather, our usual playful tool, rested nearby. She's always been ticklish and quick to use our safe word if things got too intense. But tonight would be different. She scanned the room and grinned. "Ooh, looks like I'm in for a treat." "It's your birthday," I said. "Thought I'd pull out all the stops. Go freshen up and take the pill. I'll be right back." She practically skipped into the bathroom. I stepped into the garage and grabbed my bag of surprises. When I returned, she was on the bed, wearing nothing but a smile. "Flip over," I said calmly. She giggled, rolling onto her stomach. "Something different tonight?" I took the plush-lined restraints and secured her wrists to the side bedposts. Not the center as usual. Tonight, her arms and legs would be fully extended. "Yeah, I read something interesting," I said as I moved to her ankles. "Oh, a new trick," she teased. "Better remind me of our safe word." We always kept them light and playful. Kitten, rainbow, something silly to keep things fun. But as I reached for the gag, slipping it over her mouth, her body stiffened. "Travis, what are you doing?" I leaned in, my voice cold and calm. "Your safe word tonight is overnight sensation." Her body went rigid. Her eyes widened with realization. No. Let's rewind to last weekend. Phyllis and I had taken a short getaway to Aruba. 4 days, 3 nights. We arrived Thursday afternoon, and I drank too much at dinner, passing out early. Friday, Same story. I barely made it past happy hour. By Saturday morning, I felt like hell and told Phyllis I'd lay off the alcohol for the rest of the trip. But the damage was done. She was furious. Apparently, I'd ruined her vacation. She didn't even say goodbye before storming off to the beach. I wasn't far behind her. While waiting for the elevator, I caught a glimpse of her inside, standing close to a man she'd flirted with on our first night. I watched as he kissed her cheek and handed her an envelope. I took the stairs, making it to the lobby in time to see her slowly walking toward the beach, reading a note. She crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. Curious and uneasy, I retrieved the note. What I read stopped my heart cold. Phyllis, you've been an overnight sensation these last 2 nights. The love was mind-blowing. You gave me so much excitement. I felt like a king. Too bad he's not drinking today, or we could have spiked his drink again. I'll just have to wait to see you in Sacramento. Until then, Vince. P.S. Here's my number. Vince. So that was his name. I sat on a nearby bench, the paper shaking in my hands. My heart pounded. My wife. Drugging me. Cheating on me. Laughing behind my back. Rage surged through me. But even in that storm of fury, I stayed calm enough to think. I visited the front desk and made a generous donation to the assistant manager's weekend fund. In exchange, I got access to security footage. What I saw confirmed everything. The first night, Phyllis and I had joined a table of strangers. I was drunk and distracted. She, annoyed by my attention to another woman, turned to the man next to her, Vince. At one point, Vince whispered something into her ear. She smiled and handed him my drink. A minute later, Phyllis was urging me to finish my drink. 15 minutes after that, Phyllis and Vince were guiding me back to our room. Vince departed in the early hours of the morning, some 6 hours later. The second day found us in beach chairs. Phyllis went to fetch refills, and I later learned she had met up with Vince while getting our drinks. 15 minutes subsequently, Phyllis and Vince were assisting me back to our room once more. Vince's friend left approximately 8 hours later. The remainder of our trip was fraught with tension. A desire for retribution took root, though I knew impulsive action would be unwise. During the long waits in airport terminals for our return flights, I had ample time to consider a more calculated response. A cold smile touched my lips as a plan began to form. Back in the present, the hypocrisy stung. I wouldn't have objected to an ex-wife finding a new partner, but Phyllis and I were still married. The blatant infidelity felt like a profound betrayal. Tonight, I suspected, would change everything. A grim satisfaction settled within me. When the gag was secured, Phyllis's protests were immediately silenced, replaced by muffled cries and the frantic movement of her restrained body. From a bag I had prepared, I retrieved a bottle of lubricant. My intention was not sexual, but rather to inflict a different kind of torment, one designed to play on her betrayal. With deliberate movements, I positioned Phyllis. Panic flared in her eyes as she struggled against her restraints. I proceeded with my carefully conceived plan, one designed to exploit her guilt and fear. "Well, Phyllis," I said, my voice deceptively calm, "you seem to have a knack for surprises. I have one of my own for you." I produced a covered jar, its contents hidden from view. Inside, insects moved restlessly. I continued, my tone even. "Since you seem to have misplaced your sense of decency, perhaps these little creatures can help you find it." Phyllis thrashed against her bonds, her muffled sounds conveying rising terror. My monologue continued, a calculated display of psychological manipulation. I spoke of insects, of dark places, of things burrowing beneath the skin, knowing full well the fear I was instilling. Absolute terror now gripped Phyllis. I covered her head, plunging her into darkness and amplifying her vulnerability. Returning to my bag, I exchanged the jar for another, this one containing a liquid I had prepared. Phyllis could hear the faint sounds of the jar being opened close to her ear, her anxiety palpable. The insects remained safely contained. Instead, I applied the liquid, a concoction laced with itching powder, to a set of smooth beads. Ignoring the warnings on the powder's container, I focused on my intended effect. "Happy birthday to you," I sang, the cheerful melody a stark contrast to the scene. "Happy birthday, dear cheating wife. Happy birthday to you." With each word, I pressed the beads against her back, the itching powder beginning its work. Her body convulsed against the restraints. I punctuated the act with feigned disgust, pretending to remove imaginary insects. "You," I'd say, or "yuck," adding to the psychological torment. After a sustained period, I produced an empty jar, displaying it to Phyllis after removing the covering from her head. Her eyes, wide with fear and hatred, met mine. She continued to struggle, but I was not yet finished. A feather appeared in my hand, and I lightly brushed it across her feet and underarms, prolonging her agony. A look of pure, unadulterated loathing contorted her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh well," I remarked casually, "you just never know how your spouse is going to react to infidelity." I announced my intention to get a beer and left the room. Outside, I released the insects unharmed. The itching powder on my hand was indeed potent, a testament to its effectiveness. Returning after some time, I anticipated Phyllis's fury. I proceeded cautiously, releasing her restraints one by one, maintaining control while feigning vulnerability. As soon as she was free, Phyllis ripped off the gag and lunged at me, her accusations and threats echoing in the room. For a brief period, I allowed her physical outburst, deflecting her blows while her attention was consumed by the intense itching on her back. Seizing the opportunity, I embraced her in a bear hug and began to move towards the door. Despite her struggles, I managed to maneuver her outside. With a final push, I propelled her out and locked the door, leaving her exposed and enraged. Her furious shouts and threats were clearly audible. All of this, including her frantic state and threats, was being recorded on my phone. It was time to enact the final stage of my plan. I dialed emergency services. 911, "What's your emergency?" I fabricated a story of Phyllis taking pills and becoming violent. I mentioned minor injuries and claimed to have pushed her out of the house in self-defense, describing her incoherent ramblings about bugs and babies. I requested paramedics, portraying her as completely deranged. After providing my address, I was informed that help was on the way. Through the window, I watched Phyllis scratching herself frantically in the yard, her distress evident. The flashing lights of emergency vehicles soon illuminated the neighborhood, drawing the attention of onlookers. The scene unfolded with Phyllis a spectacle for the gathered officers. Her resistance to their commands prompted the deployment of a taser, the sudden immobilization allowing them to secure her with cuffs. This, of course, prevented her from scratching at the phantom itch. The paramedics, cautioned against sedation due to the unknown nature of the alleged hallucinogen, strapped her to a gurney. Restrained at both hands and feet, Phyllis recounted her bizarre ordeal. "My husband tied me up and stuffed bugs up my back. They're having babies, crawling around. I can feel them. Get them out. I'm going to kill him." The emergency responders exchanged weary glances, likely accustomed to far more outlandish claims. Phyllis was conveyed to County General Hospital. As part of my statement, the police documented my injuries. I recounted a tumultuous evening, alleging Phyllis had taken ecstasy to heighten her experience, only to descend into irrationality and violence. I even suggested she sourced the pills in Mexico, a fabricated detail delivered with convincing sincerity. Left to my own devices, the officers informed me of Phyllis's mandatory arrest for domestic violence, my consent being irrelevant. A small, dark satisfaction flickered within me. This was an unexpected bonus, compounded by charges of resisting arrest, possession of a controlled substance, and its illegal importation, the latter two, I feigned surprise to learn, were felonies. Apparently, her law-breaking had been ongoing for years. Adorned with more bandages than necessary, I drove to County General, assuming the role of the concerned and supportive husband. My hands, ironically, still itched as I discreetly disposed of the incriminating bag of jars, beads, and itching powder in a trash receptacle near the hospital entrance. Emergency rooms, by their nature, prioritize genuine medical crises. Phyllis, labeled a drug overdose case with apparent psychosis, was low on the triage list. Blood samples were drawn to identify the supposed substances. She remained restrained, though the 4 drips seemed to have a calming effect, until she saw me. Her renewed agitation earned her a further dose of sedative. As they wheeled her away for a CT scan, intended to definitively disprove her bug infestation delusion, I offered a performance of worried concern. It was nearing midnight when the attending physician finally provided an update. "Mr. McKinney," he began, "as far as we can ascertain, your wife ingested ecstasy. We haven't encountered a reaction quite like this." He continued, "The enema yielded no foreign objects, and the CT scan showed no abnormalities in her colon or rectum. She has scratched herself quite severely. Every time we release a hand, she immediately resumes scratching, so we've had to keep her restrained. Even after showing her the scan results, she remains convinced she can feel insects crawling and reproducing. We will be keeping her overnight for observation. She is currently sedated, and we hope that once the effects of the ecstasy subside, she will return to her normal state." "Is she still threatening my life?" I inquired, feigning unease. "That is, understandably, quite concerning for me." "Yes," the doctor confirmed. "We have documented her threats in her chart. As I mentioned, this is an atypical reaction to ecstasy." "I understand," I murmured, offering a sympathetic shrug. I then went to Phyllis's room and placed a brief, insincere kiss on her forehead, a performance for any potential observers. While local city council candidates typically garnered minimal press attention, this unfolding drama proved an irresistible spectacle. Someone, undoubtedly, had contacted the anonymous tip line before my hospital visit. The headline practically wrote itself: "City council candidate charged with domestic violence and resisting arrest. Possible illegal drug overdose involved. Held overnight for psychiatric evaluation." The combined evidence from the paramedics, the hospital, and my carefully recorded video made obtaining a restraining order mandating Phyllis stay 500 feet away from me a swift and decisive victory. I strategically delayed filing for divorce, preferring to observe the trajectory of events. My prediction was that she would initiate the proceedings. The following morning, Phyllis's parents visited her, only to be met with continued rants, ravings, and death threats. I informed them of the restraining order and her arrest. They expressed understanding, noting she was still handcuffed to her bed. While typical overdose patients might be released the next day, Phyllis's persistent delusion of bugs and babies, coupled with her incessant scratching, resulted in an extended 2-night stay. Presumably, that was the duration required for the itching agent to be fully eliminated from her system. Phyllis eventually appeared before a judge. Bail was set high due to the drug smuggling charges, but her parents ultimately posted the amount. Predictably, divorce papers were served on me the very next day. The ever-eager press, with little else to occupy their attention, attempted to solicit a statement. I made sure to sport an exaggerated number of bandages. "Mr. Travis," a reporter began, "can you tell us about the events leading up to your wife's arrest?" I adopted a tone of reluctant disclosure. "Well, Phyllis enjoys a bit of playful restraint, and after an intimate moment, I began teasing her with a feather. Suddenly, she completely lost control. The moment I freed her, she became violent, biting and hitting me." I added, with a carefully crafted air of magnanimity, "I even requested the authorities not to press charges for domestic violence, but apparently that decision was not mine to make." No further comments. Too much information? The public, it seemed, relished such displays of private turmoil. Phyllis arrived with a sheriff's deputy to collect some of her belongings. My attorney had stipulated that she could only take her personal clothing, as all other possessions were subject to the asset division outlined in the divorce agreement. I could see the suppressed fury in Phyllis's eyes, the desire to unleash her anger, but under the watchful gaze of the deputy, she was limited to a venomous glare. I subtly pretended to scratch my backside, a gesture that nearly pushed her over the edge. Phyllis's political aspirations were effectively destroyed. The press relentlessly pursued her, focusing on her personal life and apparent mental breakdown. I suspected the vultures were circling once again. Her private struggles had become public fodder, leading to unwanted scrutiny and a reassignment to a desk job at the hospital. While outright dismissal was avoided, the institution no longer wished her to represent them publicly. Anticipating Phyllis's potential for elaborate revenge, I swiftly secured an overseas position. There was no need to tempt fate. This move also conveniently shielded me from any inquiries when a man named Vince from Sacramento reported the inexplicable emptying of his bank and investment accounts, over $250,000, according to the news reports. Thank you for the phone number, Vince. Those freelance scam artists were surprisingly efficient. I did send him a rather extravagant greeting card, the cost easily justified by his impromptu contribution to a luxurious overnight stay in Aruba. Following a court-ordered mental evaluation that deemed Phyllis fit to stand trial, she entered a no-contest plea to the domestic violence charge. The resisting arrest charge was dropped, and she plea-bargained the drug smuggling charges down, though she was now a convicted felon. Her apparent ignorance of the law's specifics likely played a role in that concession. The sentence: 60 days in jail and a significant amount of community service. During our mandatory final divorce meeting via Zoom, Phyllis's sole question was chilling. Someday, you'll have to tell me how you did it. Really? I retorted, feigning offense. You aren't even sorry for destroying our marriage? I'm glad to be rid of you. You're a disgrace, she spat. Tell me about the bugs. There were no bugs, I replied evenly. All I did was tickle you. You'll have to tell me why you did it. Just get a divorce instead of betraying your vows. There were bugs. Just tell me, please, she pleaded, her voice laced with desperation. And so our marriage concluded. I have no intention of returning to the United States. If you had witnessed the look in Phyllis's eyes, you would undoubtedly agree. I believe she still has a persistent bug in her mind. I am currently dating, though long-term commitment holds little appeal. Commitments, it seems, have their own set of bugs to work through. Very well, I shall refrain from further insect-related metaphors. I do, however, occasionally wonder if Phyllis experiences phantom itches and imagines the hatching of non-existent offspring. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.